Okay, so now I'm requesting the Meja ma'am to kindly start this session, please. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rohit. Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome once again to this 89th series of the next lecture in the webinar, which we have started under the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. And this is an initiative of Government of India. We are celebrating 75 years of our independence, and also we are commemorating the various activities, the history of our people, culture, our achievements, and also dedicating this event to the people of India who have been instrumental in bringing India to this level, and also continue to contribute towards the next level of India 2.0. So this is a festival of awakening of the nation. We are all holding a lot of events. There are a lot of activities, and which can be in the form of seminars, in the form of awareness campaigns or exhibitions. And we in Skill Council have decided to hold a webinar for all the sectors in which we are working. And we decided that we will invite experts and speakers and learned people in different sectors like renewable, we have waste, we have water management, we also have sustainability, net zero, and the current buzz is just transitions. So we have almost hosted 88 lectures in all these areas, and I am very happy to share that we have learned a lot from our speakers, and this is a really valuable asset which we have generated within SCGJ of interacting and of course getting this wealth of knowledge from them. So today the topic is for green transitions with focus on waste management, and I would like to welcome Ms. Aarti Mohan. She's been with us for a very important activity which we had done, a report on the landscape of green jobs in all the sectors, and I think all the sectors are very relevant. Madam, if you go through our website, or as you have been interacting with Skill Council, we are very active in all the sectors. We have developed so many qualification packs, we have done so many trainings, and we are just moving forward. And just transition, of course, it is not only related to coal mines. It is not that the workers in the coal mines only have to be placed in a way that they should not suffer. They should have a better system of livelihood, or they shouldn't be where even if they are not better, at least they should not suffer. But I feel this area or this transition has to take place in every sector. While we are moving towards energy transition, we are moving towards a net zero goals. We have to transit all our job roles, all our whether it is in the traditional sector or it is in the green sector, we have to move towards green economy. So I feel that your topic is going to really help us and enlighten us. I welcome you, and I thank you that you have taken out time and given us this opportunity to interact with you and listen to you. So welcome, madam, and I feel that I'm really waiting to hear how just transition can be possible in all these sectors. And of course, it is going to be a learning. Thank you very much, and welcome once again. Now I request Mr. Deepak to kindly introduce our learned speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome once again, Aarti, for joining us as one of the speakers in our initiative for Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav webinar series. So Aarti is a co-founder and partner at Sattva Consulting, and she has over 20 plus years of experience spanning advisory, research, anchoring large-scale programs, and organizational leadership at Sattva Consulting. And as part of her earlier role, leading foundations and research advisory practice, Aarti has led the creation of several flagship research and knowledge reports and multiple engagements, curating knowledge exchanges in the sector, bringing together funders, philanthropists, foundations, and nonprofits. Essentially, she has led the design and anchoring of several large-scale impact initiatives across waste management, livelihood, environment, healthcare, gender, water, and digital transformation. She has also led the government advisory engagements at Sattva Consulting, and she executes a lot of programs in multiple states across India on critical policies and programs. She has a degree in computer engineering from Birla Institute of Technology, Pilani, and she's an alumnus of the management program for women entrepreneurs at IIM Bangalore. So welcome once again, Aarti. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Praveen, for the very warm welcome. And Deepak, for your really kind words. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I mean, we've been collaborating with the Green Sector Skill Council over the last, I think, 1.5 years. And it's been such a lovely partnership to be able to explore this emerging area of economy in such an important way, to look at what it will take for the workforce to be a very gameful part of this, and that lead to inclusive development. So it is entirely my pleasure to be here and talk about our learnings through the collaboration that we had around green jobs and green entrepreneurship, and what we can unlock in the light of India's bold green vision for the future. So I'd request my colleague Lekya to sort of flash the presentation. I'll go through our learnings and experience in the next 20 minutes, and that would leave us about 20-25 minutes for questions, comments, and would really love for this to be an interactive session. So once I've gone through the presentation, I'd really welcome questions and experiences of all the other eminent people that have joined us this afternoon. Wanted to start it off also by saying thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really important for us to be able to share these learnings with the wider ecosystem that are decision makers, entrepreneurs, and influencers looking at advancing this space. So thank you so much for that. Starting off to say, I mean, just to place this in context, India has really taken a very bold bet through the commitments made around green transition, and we have also followed through on the commitments with much more significant advancement than many other countries in line with what we've promised on COP, and various other working groups have come up with some really interesting deliberations over the last 1 year of India's G20 presidency that has emphasized on lifestyle for environment and environment transition being a very, very critical anchor in the inclusive development and growth path for India going forward. And our submission is that in terms of what might be one of the most important levers and most important considerations to be able to make this transition possible, because our investments as a country have been really bold in energy and various other infrastructure elements. So in order for us to address those infrastructure being effectively deployed is the transition of the workforce from various other existing sectors. I mean, just construction industry today employs more than 60 million workers, and for them to be able to, just as an example of one industry among several industries that is going to be making a fairly bold transition pathway, construction, apparel, and logistics, these are all making very significant strides towards green. And in the light of that, how do we further transition the workforce here? And we also, as a country, have a very large demographic dividend that's going to last us the next 10 years. So any kind of pathways that we evolve have to be in these 10 years. These are very, very crucial years. So at Sattva, we've had an opportunity to look at just transitions from various different lenses. And before going into this, I just wanted to very quickly recap what does just transition mean from a definition perspective, as we have from all the way in which all the global standards have defined it, but also from a very authentic Indian reality. So how do we green the economy in a way that we are able to create decent work opportunities for all and leave no one behind? So therefore, looking at what are the future of operations and outcomes for it to be equitable, addressing the past inequities that have been experienced by vulnerable groups and communities, particularly in climate affected areas. And going forward, how can we look at economic and social justice for an agency for all the people that will be involved? So therefore, in the Indian context, one, how do we establish the space for dialogue like we're doing right now, and how do we sort of make that scalable? and this is an effort that's been happening at various different parts of the policy ecosystem, is to support better labor standards and human rights. 3 is to be able to look at economy-wide skill development, particularly in the light of the transitions that big business is making towards green. And literally every big business in India is making a transition towards and taking net zero targets and so on, and making those shifts. And 4th is to look at how do we, in the light of transition, how do we upgrade the existing skills of recognize and upgrade the existing skills of the current workforce. And the last is providing social security and safety nets to be able to be resilient in whatever way, because many of this is going to be what we discover as we move forward, and not what is already defined as of today. So therefore, how can there be more social safety nets that protect workers moving forward? So in terms of the sectors that are most critical subsectors for the green growth investments, as you can see, we've defined about 8 sectors that we think have a fairly good prospects in waste: plastic, e-waste, municipal solid waste, biohazard, radioactive, construction, textile, and wastewater. And out of these, we feel given the kind of employment and entrepreneurship opportunities that these sectors, we have identified 4 of these have been especially very critical, is textile waste, e-waste, construction waste, and water waste. And we've been, thanks to also the collaborations we've had with JP Morgan Philanthropy, with the Sector Skill Council for Green Jobs, with Fashion for Good, Acumen, and IDH, we have had an opportunity to study this ecosystem in some depth and detail with respect to employment, and would love to go over some of the learnings. They have further emphasized the criticality of ensuring a decent work and entrepreneurship opportunities, and what are the various considerations when we relate to that, not just for a section of the workforce that's already in it, but a larger section of youth that are going to come into these sectors, for adjacent and adjoining employment spaces that are related to these as they make the green transition moving forward. So what is the economic potential of these and what is the reality of these sectors? In waste management itself, as you can see from there is expanding urbanization and industrialization. So therefore, the need for recycling and managing wastewater is huge. India just consumes 3,000 billion cubic meters of water yearly, and this space is growing at a CAGR of 13%. So therefore, for especially the caste minorities employed in this space, there is a vulnerability, and there are sufficient people employed for us to be considering what we need to move, and what we need to move, not just and incrementally, but also reimagine what the working conditions might even look like. The second piece is e-waste management. India is the 3rd largest producer of e-waste globally, and this is going to also see an increased and upward trend. The 10% increase in e-waste every year is going to translate to another 0.5 million jobs. And the sector is largely informal, just like many of the other sectors. So therefore, women particularly are involved in this sector, along with caste minorities, and that's the consideration here. In terms of textile waste, India is experiencing a huge wave of green transition, particularly led by sectors like textile. We see at the consumer front so many lines completely derived from plastic waste, the entire circularity that we see in fashion goods and so on. And therefore, where does the waste go? And our recent study with Fashion for Good pointed to the fact that while India is seen as a sink for the textile waste and a ground where we just process it, we could further be the ground of innovation to look at various ways in which we can leapfrog the management of textile waste, as equally we are a producer of textile waste, and we can lead the circularity innovation as a country itself. And there, while we take along the 4 million textile waste workers, and that's the consideration, it's also an imperative for us to look at what innovations these workforce could be a part of. The last is construction waste, and of course, given that 60 million people are already employed, and out of which the major vulnerabilities experienced by the 11 million migrant construction workers. The 150 million tons is something that needs to be looked at further, because green construction is being looked at across every space, whether public or private, and the space itself is growing moving forward. Yeah, if you were to look at, just go one step deeper within the four sectors that we talked about, there are specific value chain segments that are undergoing transition, right? For example, within wastewater management, the O&M and transmission and the waste treatment, particularly with large-scale demonstrated projects like Namami Gange and Swachh Bharat, over 170 common effluent treatment plants coming up. And we had a chance along with USAID and Unitas to even study the most lucrative startup and entrepreneurship opportunities for businesses that are coming into this segment. So therefore, the jobs that will have to be impacted is a fairly high labor, 3 shifts a day kind of job, and therefore with the high regulations, what do we require to further transition these jobs? The second space, of course, is within e-waste is recycling and refurbishment, and across the board what we are generating, and now particularly with the semiconductor vision that India has taken across commerce and industry, there's going to be so much more production of silicon manufacturing of products related to electronics in the country itself, which otherwise was being imported. So therefore, even more of a skilled workforce being present in these spaces is going to be very important. And therefore, what do we need to look at new skills that will be needed for this particular growth, and what could we sort of look at there? And maximal retrieval of e-waste is even more desirable because it is high economic value as well. So therefore, a high potential industry. The third is textile waste, where global standards have enabled increased usage of recycled materials. Like recent provisions in the Europe economy around sustainability have further enhanced what apparel can do with textiles on recycling, and also mandated some of that. So therefore, reusing materials is becoming an overall imperative. So what do we need here? And I would say that both innovation as well as transitioning the current labor force here both need careful thought. Last is construction waste, where the amount recovered is the lowest. So therefore, how do we reimagine what is today just going as debris and into landfills is the consideration going forward. Yeah. So in terms of, therefore, we also looked at saying, today, if these industries are making these transition, what are the models that will allow them? Regulation, of course, is one place where you have to get it done, and therefore what you will do. But regulation honestly doesn't incentivize transition in the most inclusive way it should be. So therefore, what do we need in terms of partnerships and collaborations with the philanthropic ecosystem for us to be able to make these transitions work effectively, for us to be able to get the workforce ready for the green, for the new green jobs and the new green entrepreneurship opportunities that are arriving, is an area that we sort of deep dived into and looked at what, because in many ways, the catalytic investments coming in from philanthropy can really produce those demonstrative goods that then can get industry to, scale it up and so on. While at Sattva, we really believe private sector has to be a partner right from day zero. But we also realize that some of these philanthropic investments are going to actually be very, very important for us to have the right research and public goods, for us to have the right demonstrations and the right partnerships that bring along a more long tail of private sector investments. So therefore, the areas where we believe philanthropy can play a large role, because otherwise philanthropy should really make way for market solutions in its scaling journey, because philanthropy neither has the kind of capital or the kind of context to be able to develop so many of these subsegments. So one, if there are more than 100,000 jobs that have the potential to be created, and these are jobs that can be created for communities that today aren't involved in these jobs as much, right? Like women, people with disability, more elderly working population, and so on, then that's the first opportunity to look at where philanthropy can actually play a role in ensuring that these are tried and tested. Like, for example, the Skill India Impact Bond is looking at, how do we intentionally get more women? And now they are looking at women with a certain focus on healthcare, because those are where the new jobs are getting created and so on. So therefore, philanthropy can play a role in terms of the new jobs and ensuring that there is transition and involvement of communities and inclusion there. Second is, while there are high aspirations among the youth and other people entering the workforce and looking for work, but on an average, at least, the awareness, is low, right? Like we did at Sattva, we did a survey around green jobs that helped us understand what young people know about green jobs. And that's not too much in depth, right? Because it's not that it's been communicated. It's not that they have avenues to really understand. And therefore, to even be able to realize and apply and be able to get into these opportunities is low, because the awareness doesn't lie on the supply side. So therefore, understanding critically workforce aspirations so that we can design those jobs more effectively, and putting together awareness in ways that not just awareness, right? Like even to look in a certain way, counseling and readiness, preparedness, and then matchmaking is an important part that philanthropy can play in as we make this transition. Third is there are a lot more new policies emerging. Just last week, we got the whole green sector note, which has large ramifications in terms of green credits for companies, right? Like so many new progressive policies, and there were 4 working groups just in the G20 focusing on energy and environment. So there's bound to be just next few weeks, there are bound to be some really big announcements and policy level decisions that will then need to get into the implementation ecosystem. And that's an area where we believe that philanthropy can really play a role. Then the other is there is presence of industry drivers and market play. So therefore, rising number of private players, and that's only going to increase with a lot of these announcements. And the last is, there is a large skilling ecosystem that has gotten created over the last decade with many different PPP models, partnerships with the ITIs, and the whole high school vocational program, the on-the-job training program, and many of the other programs that have been implemented. Now, how do we sort of consolidate and move all of this ecosystem that has been created effectively through key levers, including digital, including, the kind of cohorts that then they will have to include and move forward, is something that is another area of opportunity in capacity building of these areas. And while the left-hand side of the segment has a large set of opportunities where we see potential is high, the right-hand side does, because it is with respect largely either public or private infrastructure, and therefore philanthropy coming in here has to be notified even more. That's how we saw the opportunities. So therefore, in terms of how we lined up the opportunities, in textile waste, we said that to institutionalize entry-level training of textile workers for safe disposable recovery and recycling is a very critical high-value opportunities across these sectors, right? So across the various different types of work happening within the textile, which results in waste and which can be again reused. So and there we said that there is a very large opportunity in terms of the construction. While it is true that the construction work is very large, we do believe that there is a fairly large policy ecosystem play, with IGBC having a important criteria for getting credit scoring and for safe demolition and so on. And the demand is increasing. So therefore, while the opportunity for philanthropy may be limited, we still believe that philanthropic investments could go into upskilling waste workers, given that the demand is already increasing. Except that it's a very highly fragmented space that, as a private sector industry, will have to grow and sort of extend backwards in their value chains to be able to make this happen. The third place where we see philanthropy coming in very strongly is in e-waste management, to already we have these local, I mean, Sahas, for example, is a company we worked with very closely. And Sahas today has grown from an NGO that they just recently celebrated their decade of growth. And 10 years ago, they were an NGO working on development, overall with respect to waste. And today they are, close to a 3-digit crore revenue company with investors lined up to support them. And they have kept the development mandate also intact, and they work very extensively in the city infrastructures and in cities across India to look at how women workers can have a very dignified, workplace, how aggregation can lead to wealth creation by waste, in supporting institutions, both public and private sector, in developing a very healthy transaction with segregated waste as a service. And therefore prevented so much waste from going to the landfills. And there are many such companies that are, getting a chance to innovate effectively. So therefore, to help these companies and startups, and also the large scale private sector in e-waste, training incoming workforce to create a cadre for safe recovery, recycling, refurbishment is a high value opportunity. And segregation and collection value chain segments, we do see is a little bit of a medium opportunity. In wastewater management, the skilling the ETP workforce is another area we see as high value. Low to medium value. But if the ecosystem, because literally with the whole smart cities initiative, with the incoming targets that we are picking up at the city level, to be able to look at focusing on waste very effectively, in the light of the 15th Finance Commission, decentralizing a lot of these development decisions at the city level. It's very all of these will be held very closely by the parastatals and the city management institutions at the city level. Given that that's a reality, the developing sustainable models that are procured by government and supported by private sector to allow for the SME landscape to come in is a very, very critical entrepreneurship opportunity. And if you're able to make that happen, then the ETP workforce can also be equally skilled in those areas and coming in. So these were the, where we were thinking that the philanthropic ecosystem can play a very large role. So that's what I had in terms of my, presentation. And I'd love to visit the slide deck for any further questions on particular slides or questions overall. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a very elaborate, and I really like the way you have studied all the sectors, potential waste sectors, and what are the opportunities for skilling. But like you said, in construction and this thing, you want to upskill for collection and segregation. What about recycling? Because, construction waste has got so much of opportunity in terms of making better products and this thing. So what about skilling people or skilling workers for recycling or making something better from the C&D waste? Don't you see that also as an opportunity?
No, absolutely. But I think I'd love for my colleague Lekia to come in here, because so ma'am, some of the problems that we've encountered is definitely there is the policy has come into place that looks at safe demolition and so on. But the incentives to look at creating something out of that waste is not there. On the other hand, the construction industry is one of the most industries that works entirely through the last mile contractors. And none of the big real estate organizations even know where their workforce is coming from. It's the most unorganized, which is also why the construction industry was really, really challenged during COVID, because everybody went back. So we know that the first issue is itself the kind of working structure that exists for these construction workers that are on a daily wage basis. And their social protection is very varying. Some states like Karnataka, they've got that going, whereas some states, they don't have as much. So I think there is a lot of supply side issues to be sorted in, to even provide workforce with an enabling environment to be able to operate in the construction industry. And some form of backward integration. I mean, we did a pilot where we said, can you treat the workers more ethically if I incentivize the micro contractors? And we actually were successful in doing that in Bengaluru and in one set of clusters in NCR. we need more initiatives that can actually help to provide a better working environment and then incentivize the recycling of those debris, because otherwise the debris is completely incentivized to just get demolished now. Lekya, would you like to add?
Nothing to add on to it, Aarti. I think you covered it well.
Yeah. And even for the wastewater management, you focused on the ETP. Yes, that is an experience the Skill Council also has in terms of trainings. We trained about 800 ETP operators. We have a training module for technicians for operations. So we were very successful, but the helpers and all, we have some training modules for the helpers also, but we were not able to reach them. So they're also an important, because they are all on contract and they don't know anything what hazardous work they are doing, how they are doing, there are no instructions, no guidelines, and how unsafe it is. So that is also one potential area. We could touch only on the operators, though there are so many ETPs all over the country, but we could only touch upon them. And of course, the sewage treatment plants, they are also very important. They're the operators, the technicians, they work in very unsafe conditions. So right from the very, yeah, please.
I absolutely agree with you, ma'am. And I think that's where the potential for ESG for small businesses and micro business, because these are the businesses that get these contracts. And today they don't have neither the awareness nor the incentive to be able to establish better working conditions for their workers. Right? And already they are also struggling a little bit with navigating the procurement ecosystem from the government, because these are all very large government held and the large big business. And unless the big business brings the MSME into the fold, there is no ethical working conditions sort of set up. So I completely agree with you that if we were to even do a demonstration with the MSMEs, and we've seen very positive results when we've done this in other industries with the MSMEs itself, looking at their ESG in a way that it's coming in as a positive nudge from the big business, but it's something that they are able to take forward and implement and within a certain business sustainability context. So would love to share learnings offline, but I think that could be a way for us to get these workers to be treated better.
Yeah, they were so happy when we interacted with them. I think there's a question, first I will take Mr. Pranay Karuna's question. How green jobs finds its way into the school to work transition space, similar to other traditional jobs around vocational training or digital or ITs, etc., who could enter the school education space? So how the transit is going to be for the green jobs in the school education. I think that's what it implies.
Yeah. I'm just going to defer to Lekha because she's done the most work in this space.
Yeah, I think Aarti Sukhada, through her work in education practice area as well, has been looking into school to work transition quite closely across sectors. So I let her take this question, as well as I think Sukhada had a point on the previous question around, upskilling, recycling workers as well, and how that sort of ties back into the initial parts of the value chain. So I'll just let her come in over here.
Thanks, Lekha, and thank you, Aarti. Thank you, ma'am, for asking that question around construction. Right now, because our presentation is also focused on waste and construction waste, but your question on recycling is also linked to the early part of the value chain, is what we learned through the study as well. The entire part of, replacing all the construction material with sustainable material. And there are interesting innovators, social entrepreneurs who are coming in. And once that material is replaced with more recyclable material, so it's not only the waste segment of the value chain, but also the skilling, the work, the investments that are needed to bring in more sustainable material. Will that reflect in more upskilling for recycling construction waste as well? Right now, a lot of focus is, of course, on demolition and, segregating the waste that comes into construction, but also wanted to highlight the early segments of the value chain here. In fact, I think the Skill Council for Green Jobs also worked on one such qualification pack around bricks that are more sustainable. So that was a very interesting learning for us as well. And more experiments and more investments in this are taking place now, just to add to what Aarti said. That was one. The other part, the Pranay's question that has come up, it's a very, very pertinent question. And I'd like to share I'd like to answer the question in two ways. One is this entire focus on school to work transition that has come through the national education policy, which is very, very critical. The curriculum framework, which is very, very critical. And the second part of it is through the survey that we also did with the Skill Council for Green Job during the study around green jobs, where we tried to map the aspirations of youth for green jobs. And what we understood while we were preparing for that survey, we were trying to understand how much do youth know about green jobs? Kitna awareness hai? Kya jante hain? Kya wo jante hain ki aise jobs hain? And the other part of it was, if they know about green jobs, do they understand the skilling? What kind of skills are needed, etc. We did this survey with almost 2,500 youth across 6 cities in India, mostly tier 1 and tier 2 cities. And while preparing for this, what we learned, Pranay, was it was only CBSE that had kind of a green skills curriculum for their 10th graders. Apart from CBSE, right now, there is no such body that actually even talks about environmental sensitivity, the issues of global warming. So it's all connected to also how are we sensitizing our students to the challenges of climate change. So what we felt was that there has to be a linkage between during school, what is done in environmental sciences, or the entire discussion around problem solving for climate change, getting STEM skills into place, etc., and then exposure through different awareness programs about green skills. So this was one of our major learnings from the survey as well, that we need to create awareness. The results also indicated that youth are aware कि मेरे यहाँ पे solar का job है, या EVs के jobs they were more aware about. But if you get into nuances of the jobs, that's where more information is needed too. Where can I get skilling? That is also where more information is needed. And if Deepak, Lekhya, you'd like to add anything about the survey, I would be happy. But that was from my end. Yeah.
So also building on one of the things there, I think that ensuring that as a part of this education, they, there is a connection between the courses that they are studying, even before they pick it up, and then the jobs that might be emerging. I think that's a very critical piece during the inflection points, right? Like at the 10th, when they choose to pick up the vocational scheme vis-a-vis the other scheme, and then in 12th and so on. I was recently part of an impact study that we did for a set of grassroots, colleges that were, schools and colleges were doing this transition. And the set of people that were focusing on electric vehicles in big business were coming to talk to them, corporates, and they said that there is such a connection between chemistry and lithium-ion battery and the chemical problem that is solving, which is going to be so material to how electrical vehicles can scale in India. But that connection, because chemistry was the least picked up subject in that, among all other, everybody wanted to study obviously computer science and then artificial intelligence and so on. Sorry. So when this corporate leader came in and said, you're going to find such an array of jobs if you study chemistry, because you can be part of the sustainable mobility ecosystem, that connection wasn't even established. So to be able to make the connection back to the value chain of what they're studying and what that could open out as jobs for them is a very important part of the transition. And I think the second thing I'd like to talk about is also the placing it in the larger context of what's happening with climate change and climate action, which I think life skills kind of part of the curriculum is very equipped to deal with. Today, we do see that the life skills assessment, life skills curriculum being embedded within the school curriculum under, and NEP gives it a great, sort of an encouragement, is slowly increasing. And we do this thing called the life skills collaborative, where we really started off saying what does life skills mean to you, and then being able to develop like a standard skills assessment. So I believe that in the life skills area also, to bring together the larger picture around why the environment is important, and therefore how can that translate to what needs to be learned and what can be further studied is an important point.
Yeah. Even we have come across, we have studied the universities, the central universities, the state universities, and the skill universities. And we find the on the number of courses, skill courses for green skills, they're very few. Very few, mostly in the waste and water management, waste management, and in environmental science, of course, as a broad subject. So as you said, rightly said, when the awareness is not there, the linkages are not there, how can students choose? They may have studied it in a broader sense, but otherwise the need, how they can link it with their professions, that is to be established. I want Deepak to come in if he has any comments. Deepak?
Sure, ma'am. So going forward to what Sukhada said, Aarti said, what has been happening at the school end. So yes, traditionally, a lot of aspects have been built into their education curriculum. In fact, in the last few years or so, some awarding bodies at that time, sector skill councils, they also came up with some standalone vocational programs to be introduced in schools. So in bits and pieces across domains, a lot of introduction, sector introduction at school level happened. But now since NEP 2020, now it's being introduced, as you are aware. Now, vocationalization in school has been mainstreamed under that umbrella. So even now, we recently came up with 4 new solar qualifications tailor-made for class 9, 10th, 11th, 12th. Earlier, we were never looking into schools at all. I mean, our playground, I mean, our area of operation started from once the candidate gets that certificate from the vocational institutions or a degree from any other institution of higher learning. But now we are also getting inroads. We are making new roads into, let's say, exploring the vocationalization in school areas. So we are responsible for all this green business side of it. One of our solar qualification has already been incorporated for schools. So there is a body, Central Institute of Vocational Education, which is headquartered at Bhopal. It's an NCERT constituent, which is tasked with sort of bringing all these vocational educations for schools across segments. So they would roll out this program. In fact, they have been doing it for different sectors, different qualifications, and their primary role is to create new curriculum around those vocational courses. So they have to be inbuilt with what is already being taught to, let's say, the learners from the conventional, or rather from the main education curriculum angle. So in short, a lot of new developments have happened since the introduction of NEP 2020, and now a national credit framework has come in. Our report briefly highlights that point as well as one of the latest development in this overall ecosystem. It's not an easy task to introduce many things at school, but it's been happening. It's off late. It has picked up pace. A lot of challenges are there. We are also tasked with, creating new and new qualifications. The other day we were discussing that we will come up with some school-related engagements in the fuel of the future, green hydrogen. That's what is being tagged as. So we are in process of coming up with, new and new interventions. I hope that answers that question. Not an easy task, that, let me tell you. A lot of discussion is also happening, how to do it. We all are, at different stages of confusion, but efforts are being done. A lot of catalytic convergence is happening at that end. So sorry for this long response to that.
It's okay.
Going back to
Yeah.
Aarti, I had a query. I mean, Lekhya and others, we have been discussing it. But once again, is the first query I think ma'am also asked. But let's try to revisit it. Yes, as part of the report as well, you also covered that there's a high and low categorization of philanthropic capital investments. I mean, we have been saying that, if there is no, I mean, skilling needs support, be it central public capital or any other external capital, including philanthropic support. It could be, capital could be raised from other ends, but let's try to have an easy kind of bucketing of how typically the financing is mobilized in this spectrum. So why C&D is getting less sort of C&D as in construction and demolition waste is getting less focus? Why the less value part is attributed to this? The same goes with, I know you have not covered waste as in solid waste, but wastewater. I mean, it's an important, I do understand construction in your slide itself, it creates more workers, more job opportunities, more entrepreneurial opportunities, and then the value should be tagged with, I mean, it's a philosophical question in a way. Isn't value tagged with more people, the impact it will have on people's livelihood rather than dollar or rupee terms? And it's, I don't know, but in general, construction would employ more people, so it needs more focus. Maybe e-waste, yes, it's a new segment. Last 10 odd years, it has picked up pace. 2016, this waste management rule in e-waste came in, which got amended, you have mentioned, in 2018, but it has not picked up that much pace for whatever reason. Maybe in future, e-waste would employ a lot of people, a huge responsibility. But something like waste management, something like plastics, which are huge issues now, ocean-related pollution issues for plastics, as also microplastics. It has also, this is also getting a lot of traction. My simple question for now is, isn't all area are equally important from the value part of it?
No, absolutely. Great question, Deepak. And I think construction is caught somewhere in the middle, right? And I'll sort of come in as to why, right? See, today, there is, I mean, whether it's grant capital or impact investing capital, particularly in livelihood, it can act as a catalytic capital to bridge those problem statements up to the point that they can be viable to operate as a self-sustaining business model or a self-sustaining small ecosystem that can be part of a larger value chain, right? Because there is not going to be the only way to scale anything is from a market-based point of view. And with India's policy infrastructure itself, we know that where we need to have the state come in around livelihoods, which is, between like the programs like Manrega and NRLM and so on, which really target, and also the more support ecosystem, which now are through the whole MSME program, through the Udyogadar and those infrastructure elements are coming in place from public with policy, and so therefore funding is going in public towards building those support ecosystems. Digital is being transformative there, and private and philanthropic capital is really therefore being plugged into more catalytic investment. Now, if you take the case of plastics, right, like the single reason that a lot of the plastics piece is able to go back as a more lucrative recycled good is because it has got support from the extended producer responsibility in those areas. It's, for example, if you see the plastic sachets ability to re-enter vis-a-vis the PET bottle, there's a huge difference. Also because the PET bottle, and that is something that, is able to receive encouragement from the extended producer responsibility of the large FMCG companies that are therefore able to absorb it back, right? Now, the construction industry is that one industry where the extended producer responsibility has literally been zero, because the value chain is like it's a value chain that thrives even though there is a high volume of work needed of unskilled in some sense, right? Like, yes, there is a skill, but the recognition of the skill is fairly missing, and it's fragmented. And I mean, we did this whole study to see, can the big financial institutions that are funding the construction industry place the regulation to say that you've got to treat your workers better, you've got to offer more support to do the recycling. And now only slowly some of that traction is coming with the, like, the CII has now a thing around construction, and ASSOCHAM does, and so on. So slowly you're able to see that, and there is well-meaning, but for it to translate into actual incentives and work on the ground around it it's the most nascent across all of the sectors. So unless that gets into place where there is accountability from big business, say this is what I'm able to think, it's going to be very hard for philanthropy to continue, because there's no end to that insight in grant, right? Like, the second thing is this bridge. Like in livelihood, what can then lead to a more sustainable environment is to be able to look at it from a blended perspective, right? Like, can I offer so that I get wherever I'm able to get a recognition for that skill, like skill coupon, for example, was an initiative that Michael Zusendal Foundation did, which really incentivized skilling in certain sectors. Then the Skill India bond is incentivizing the kind of enrollment now, right? Like, so, and so therefore, specific initiatives where there is a hybrid mix of capital that can come in can already sort of, also play that role. And I think, again, construction industry doesn't have much of that happening. Third is, I would say that the impact investing and the startup innovation funding, like in wastewater, for example, the reason we studied about 16 different parts of the value chain in water and wastewater, which exist vis-a-vis the invested segments by impact investors. Literally, there were only 4 of them. So those were the only areas where startups were coming in. So unless that we can get, and that's the pushing into the pipe itself of these companies. So unless that impact investing segment is going to further look at it, then we won't even have those smaller startups being created, which then can cater to the workers and skills. So those are my 3 points here.
She had raised her hand. She wanted to say something.
Yeah, Lekha here. I just want to add one point as to, how like myself, when I'm having conversations with folks in the ecosystem on how to go about reading the spectrum, right, that we sort of developed as part of the study, and the one that sort of Aarti also presented, is there are a set of investors who wish to be catalytic, right? The ones that Aarti was talking about is that they understand that I'm going to derive very low returns out of this, and they're willing to put in that risk. They're willing to take the big bet. And those are the investors who can focus on the lower end of the spectrum and the sort of the suggestions we have put in over there, because they're very hard to achieve with the lack of existing infrastructure, with the lack of existing discourse in the ecosystem about those particular challenges. While the ones that are on the higher end of the spectrum are the ones where there is existing infrastructure, where there are existing conversations. And there are investors who would be willing to support the ones on the higher end of the spectrum to support more and more replicable solutions, versus there are investors who are willing to support high risky investments. Right. So that's how I sort of have been using that as a tool to sort of read recommendations being placed along that spectrum, and not looking at it from a perspective of low value and high value, versus looking at it from a perspective of this is where a highly risky investor could look into, versus investors who wish to support more and more replicable solutions to look into. So I just want to add on that one point. And just to also use one example is in textiles, supporting innovative recycling technologies, especially technologies that are working out in the more global sort of scenarios like chemical recycling technologies, is a very risky investment to make in India. However, there are impact investors who are consciously setting aside a part of their investments to support it. Now, they are the ones who will take those big bets at the lower end of the spectrum, versus there are investors who wish to support the sorters, the dismantlers, etc., as part of the textile value chain, because there are existing sorting technologies, there are existing policies defining how waste has to be sorted, etc. And so I just want to provide some examples of how there are investors at both ends of the spectrum, even in textile waste. And that's how, we've been using this as a tool to sort of have conversations with different types of impact investors.
I think green jobs once upon a time was also facing the same. The sector was facing a lot of problems. So it was so difficult to attract investment. And as we have moved forward, but I feel, the replication only is when you do some pilots, when you can really invest, do something, and then you can move forward. So the initial phase has to be overcome, and we have to look for more, and you all have to help us, in fact, help each other in getting more funds, more investments, so that this sector can be moved, it can move forward. So that is what, and then of course it's a part of just transition is such a heavy word, so it has to be a part of the entire process. So if there are no questions, can we, Mr. PB Singh, do you have to say anything?
Ma'am, Sarvesh this side.
Yeah, Sarvesh, come.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your nice presentation on the, So I just have one query, like you explained a lot about philanthropic activities on the high value and low end side. So in your experience, what is the biggest challenge in catalyzing these green transition? Like I'm giving an example about the plastic industries. especially on the packaging side. So the plastic, they are producing a lot of plastic packaging products, and their workers. One day the announcement happened like the single-use plastic has gone, and the Maharashtra in the Maharashtra belt, most of the industries shut down. So in your experience, how these transition can be catered, like especially in the green transition, if they are moving to the sustainable packaging and all those things, on the investment side as well as on the job perspective.
No, it's a great question. And I think that, I mean, what Pranay had said last time also, right? Like, how do we at the vocational, at the school level, really already start on the alternative materials and look at, getting the workforce there. And it's not, maybe the announcement came in late, but the announcement was being planned, in terms of a mandate that had by then come to all cities, right? Like, and then some choose to look at it. And I think that further cooperation between the parastatals in the city and the state departments to be able to then look at it also, and then coordinating with the multilaterals and other funders that are involved in this space is going to be very important, so that these then don't suddenly result in a loss of jobs and livelihoods, right? Like, so how do we, and second is, I think that just like any kind of redevelopment, traditional redevelopment has been accommodated by the government. And if you did a geographical displacement, you're accommodating a redevelopment and rehabilitation. Similarly, these types of transition programs also need a thought through redevelopment and transitioning strategy, which then will take those people along, whether it's a different profession or whether it is being able to move to an alternative materials, because many of these skills are transferable. So I think today that doesn't happen because they are also a very large informal MSME value chain. So if we were to be able to work more closely with that to have a redevelopment program, I really feel like this can be taken.
Yes, and that's what this is a very informal sector. So we have challenges. Yeah, thank you.
Exactly, but I think there are other informal sectors where this has with navigation has happened, right? Like, so we should really push for it in terms of having redevelopment programs that are actually planned for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I came across one such person, displaced person, from the leather in Kanpur, the leather industry, and he is taken into driving. He says, "Ma'am, we were not given anything for our being displaced from there." And the whole family was dispersed. So these instances also happen. But of course, as you say, some sort of development programs have to be developed. They have to be, brought on record that these people have to move to some other, or they should be trained for some other activity, not left in the lurch.
Exactly. And I think we do that whenever we geographically displace people, right? Like, I think really we can emulate learnings from there for others. Yeah.
So if there are no questions, Mr. PB Singh, you have any question?
Sorry, you are on mute, sir.
Yeah, no, ma'am.
Okay. Then I would like to thank you. And it was a very interesting lecture, and the way it relates to our work also, and the way we also can connect together again. So thank you very much, and we are very grateful to you that you gave us this opportunity to be with you and listen to you more than what we heard from you during our when we launched the book. So I thank you, and I would request Mr. PB Singh to kindly formally thank the speaker and the audience. Thank you, Deepak, for being there.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank Aarti ma'am for accepting our invitation for this presentation. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for excellent presentation. It's very informative and knowledgeable. Hope all the participants are benefited. Once again, thank you very much, ma'am. Now I would like to thank all the participants for their valuable presence and support. Your presence is provide motivation to us. Thank you very much, all of you. Also, I would like to thank Dhamija ma'am, Deepak, and Mr. Rohit for the support of this webinar. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
So much.
Have a good day.
Audience through this and being with us. It's been really excellent learning, and thank you again for the opportunity
Thank you.
for us to present this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.